Dr. Glover, really appreciate you coming on.
Nick, thanks for the invite. Let's have fun.
I'm really excited about this because I texted you or emailed you a couple weeks back, and I'm sure it's an email you get quite frequently from people who read your book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, but I just finished reading that. And the first thing I said to you was, I feel seen. This book describes me perfectly. And like I said, I'm sure you get a number of those emails, messages. But before we jump into all that, I want to talk a little bit about you, but how you were able to write that book just like that. So I'd love to talk about your story a little bit to start out.
Okay.
And before you started doing No More Mr. Nice Guy author, you started out as a marriage therapist. Is that correct?
Well, let me kind of give you as much of the quick snippet of who I am and how I wrote the book. Even prior to being a marriage and family therapist, I was a minister for about 8 years. I have 2 degrees in religion. I'm not religious anymore. And about 2 years into my second marriage, I was in my early 30s. I think about the age you said you are. My then wife said, everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, but you're not. You can be mean to me. You can be passive aggressive. I'd rather be married to a jerk because at least the jerk's going to treat me bad all the time. You treat me well, do things for me, and then all of a sudden, next thing I know, you embarrass me in public, or you cut me down, or, you don't follow through on what you say, or you lie to me, whatever. Said, you need help. And I thought, well, okay, you're the one who's mad all the time, always in a bad mood. Your moods are up and down. You never want to have sex anymore. All right, I'll go get help. And I thought, I'm a nice guy. Why isn't everybody like me? And so luckily, I landed in some good places. I started out in a 12 for sex addicts because my then wife would say, you're a sex addict, mainly because I wanted to have sex with her and she didn't want to have sex with me. And so I quickly found out I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict, but I landed in a group of men. It was all guys. And for the first time in my life, I was in my early 30s. Prior, I'd been a minister. I grew up in a fundamental Christian church. Already had my PhD in marriage and family therapy by that time, but I'd never been to therapy, and I'd never really opened up about me. And so I got in this 12-step group, and I quickly realized I kind of like it here. I think it met like at 5 or 6 in the morning, but I didn't mind because for the first time in my life, I just started revealing me. I'd go every week and just talk about things I'd never told anybody before. Thoughts, behaviors, impulses, and nobody ever had a big reaction. It's kind of like, thanks for sharing, Robert. It was no big deal. I thought, this feels really good to just start saying these things that I've been hiding about me all my life because I thought I had to. Critic my father, fundamental religion with a capricious God that's going to throw you to hell for eternity for who knows why. I grew up during the angry feminism of the 60s and 70s, and every man's a rapist. An erection's a sign of aggression. If guys think, the whole toxic masculinity tirade from women, it was just as big in the 60s and 70s. They just didn't have social media to broadcast it.
Wasn't as loud.
Wasn't as loud. It was loud. It just wasn't as in your face all the time as it got to be, this time around. So, I grew up with all that. I got to hide anything about me that might get a negative reaction from anybody, father, women, my mother, God, church, whatever. And so that started just talking about me. And then I got into therapy and got into a men's group and just continued that process of self-discovery, of just, because you really can't discover much about yourself if you're kind of hiding everything about yourself. Your thoughts, your wants, your feelings, your actions. And so I just got into these real safe places where I could just start talking about me and my frustrations and my resentments and my thoughts, my impulses, my emotions, my relationship issues. And it was good. I liked it. And I started seeing things that were shifting for me. Now, by this time, I had a private practice in marriage and family therapy. And I started noticing, like it's almost I couldn't help but notice it, men coming by themselves or with their wife or girlfriend saying same things I was saying. I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you ever meet. I treat her better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. I'll do anything for her. I try to make her happy. I buy her the car she wants. I do this, whatever she wants. And she's never happy. She's always angry. So in a bad mood. Never wants to have sex anymore. When's it going to be my turn? Blah, blah, blah. I can finish their sentences for them. And then there were the single guys that I couldn't relate to quite as much. So I've kind of been married most of my adult life. But the single guys were saying something kind of similar, but different, but the same underline, basically, I'm a nice guy. I've got lots of female friends. None of them ever want to date me. Back then, they didn't say friend zone, but that's what they were talking about. And these guys would say, women tell me I'm such a great guy. Some woman is going to be so lucky to have me someday, but those women don't want me. They don't want to be my friend. What's wrong? Right? What am I doing wrong? So I started recognizing this theme of nice guy. I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. How come that doesn't work? So I started a No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group. I think at that time I had another men's group I just had started. And then so we started this No More Mr. Nice Guy. We met every other week. Quickly added another group. And I just started writing stuff to give to the guys. I had no intention of writing a book, or at least it's not about that. And I just kept writing, kept working on me, kept working on these guys. And then guys started saying, Robert, you should write a book. I mean, their wives and girlfriends were saying, Robert, you should write a book. This is good. There's lots of guys that need this. You should go on Oprah. That's kind of the routine that I heard pretty regularly. So I kept writing over a period of about 6 or 7 years. Finally, wrapped it up into, pretty much how it looks today in print form. And then it took about 3 years to get published. I found an agent who really liked it, and we shopped to a lot of publishing companies, and a lot of editors, usually women, said, Robert, we like your book. It's well written, but our marketing department says men won't buy a self-help book. I'm thinking, well, if you don't ever print self-help books for men, how can they buy them? That was probably pre Amazon, right on the cusp of Amazon. And nowadays, you go on Amazon, if you hear it on a podcast, that's pre-podcast, right? You hear a book on a podcast, and you put it in Amazon, you buy it, and people who bought this book, this book. Oh yeah, that looks good. Men buy self-help books, right?
I got a whole shelf behind me of them.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I got more than that. They're on my Kindle though. So So this was 20 plus years ago. So No More Mr. Nice Guy did come out in print in early 2003. So we're looking at 21 years ago. It sells more and more every year. My royalty checks keep getting bigger every year. I've written a few other books as well. So men and women buy it. So men do buy self-help. So the book came out, like I said, 2002, 2003. It came out as an ebook first, then print edition. And since that time, my work's been with men. Prior, I was a marriage and family therapist. I've just been working with men around relationships, dating, sexuality, work and career, and just launched a new membership program for men. And so that's my passion. That's the legacy I'm going to leave behind, is the work I've done with men. So there's a little snapshot, a little video of me and how I came to write No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Man, that's an amazing story. As a person who's trying to build my own business and stuff like that as well, just to kind of hear that whole journey, a 6-year process of writing the book, and we all want success right away. And, the fact that it doesn't happen now is frustrating for us, and we think it should be something that we can solve right away. So to just hear that story of resilience and just slowly building and waiting now, even, 20 years down the line now, having more success.
One of my friends just this week said he was in a group and my book got mentioned, and he said something about he was just glad to see the influence I've had. That he said, God, you're everywhere. I said, yeah, I'm a real overnight, success. Yeah, no, I've been working at it for about 30 years. And that's the way most overnight successes tend to show up, is, they've been at it for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And so definitely a good reminder for myself, because like I said, trying to build my own business, anybody else who's looking to establish anything in their lives, it's not just building a business, it's improving yourself, it's self-development, it's whatever it is that you're trying to change, do better, be proud of. It takes time. And I just think that reminder is super important nowadays. But why do you think
nothing like consistency over time for gaining the kind of results you want?
Amen. Compounding interest.
Good way to put it.
But why do you think nice guy syndrome is such a prevalent thing over time? Like you said, it's been 30 years that you've been talking about it, but it's even getting more popular to this day.
That's a good question. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, what makes nice guy syndrome so sticky? Why is it sticking around? Because I thought that's a good way to put it. And when I started working with nice guys, so 30 years ago, I was working a lot, guys, at that time around my age. I was in my 30s, and so I'm tail end of baby boom generation. And in the book, in No More Mr. Nice Guy, I talk about some of the things I think contributed to it socially, and kind of even beneath the social stuff. A lot of the men I work with are a lot like me. Is that we're kind of easygoing. Temperament is we're not aggressive. We're not angry. We're not. I'm not a type A personality. Um, I'm probably an overachieving type B, and so a lot of easygoing men. And then when we had certain life experiences in our family, religion, culturally, school, it just reinforced the don't rock the boat, go along to get along, don't be a problem. Everybody else's needs are more important than your own. And then in No More Mr. Nice Guy, I talked about things in my generation, like the Vietnam War, the division between boys and their fathers, a lot of boys growing up with more divorce, father's not there, fathers work a lot, father's angry, a lot of kind of taking care of our mothers. We get a school system, primarily female. But it's interesting, when I first started working with nice guys, a lot of the men reported kind of their father dynamic of dad either wasn't there, not available, or angry, couldn't get close to dad, moody, whatever. That's more like my father. Nowadays, a lot of the men I talk to, like more around your age, will say, Robert, my dad's a nice guy. And my son's 38, so he probably could have said, yeah, when I was a kid, my dad was a nice guy. So a lot more men are being raised by nice guy fathers who about the only thing that dad teaches them about life is don't piss off your mother. Because the dad's walking on eggshells trying not to piss off his wife, the boy's daughter. So, and we're in an educational system now that's built for women, built for girls. And I don't know that that's like any kind of conspiracy other than boys aren't meant to just sit still and listen to a woman teacher lecture while they, memorize stuff. Most boys aren't built for that. And so, boys are dropping out of school, they're not paying attention, getting diagnosed with ADHD, which a lot of them have. But we don't have an educational system that works well for boys. I remember my stepson when he was, I think, sixth grade, so he's 12. And he was like 6 foot tall at 12 years old. And, he had the desk in school where the little part of the desk is attached to the chair. He couldn't get in them because they were built for smaller people. And we went to the school and said, can you give him a bigger desk? So we don't have any. And so here he was trying to sit in school in a desk that was way too small for him. If you were to go to like your kid's preschool or something and sit on the little chairs, that's how he was. So even the desk was not appropriate for his learning experience. And then of course, we hit social media. My son and stepson, in their late 30s now, grew up, with broadband internet, stealing music on Napster, downloading porn, then, social media, Facebook, everything comes along. And you look at most men, if you look at all your friends, probably anytime you leave the house, they're all on their phones doom scrolling. It's either, if you're not watching YouTube videos of whatever the latest thing is, Uberman Lab, whatever, or you're on Instagram, doom scrolling. And I tell guys all the time, social media is fundamentally feminine. It feminizes you. And nothing wrong with being feminine, but it's all about the connection and external validation and approval and not really doing anything, right? Masculine is doing. Feminine is being done too. We all have a masculine, feminine side. We all do, men and women. And most men nowadays aren't necessarily particularly masculine because they've been told on social media, don't be masculine, it's toxic. Don't be like this, don't be like that. Okay, I better not be like that because I keep seeing that on my social media that tells me how to be a man. So, there's so many things that are contributing to this. Why are there more and more nice guys? And again, we probably are just scratching the surface with all of that. But basically, somebody asked me the other day, for example, why do men get so caught up in trying to please women? And I said, well, it's normal if you think about it. When we're born, we're dependent, we're needy, and our primary caregiver is a woman, usually mother. Right? And so we had to please mother just to survive. We had to make mom happy. Then we get to school system, and all our teachers are female. So just to get from second to third grade, not only do we have to learn our reading, writing, and arithmetic, we have to learn how to please a woman. Right? Then we get to be adults, and now we're going to how do I not upset any woman? How do I make sure all the women around me are happy? And so when it comes to dating, we don't do anything that might offend a woman. In a relationship, we don't want to offend a woman. At work, we don't want to offend a woman. And it makes sense that we would be raised to please women. Where the problem comes is that our ancestors, we just go back 60, 70 years, our fathers were raised by men. As soon as they were old enough to get out and help on the farm, work hard, go back even further. Our tribal ancestors, boys were initiated at about 12 into the scary world of the masculine. They learned to get comfortable, feeling uncomfortable, and they were taken out of the presence of women and taught the skills they needed to survive as a man in the world. That's not happening anymore. Men aren't taken out of the presence of women at 8, 10, 12 years old anymore and taught how to handle the scary world of the masculine. So most men that I work with, I say they're hanging out in the nursery. They're doing whatever's easiest. They're on their phones, they're on social media, they're jerking off to porn, they're playing video games, they're trying to please women, they're smoking a lot of dope, they're drinking, they're watching TV, they're binging on Netflix. None of that requires anything of a guy, and none of that contributes to the world in any way. And the thing about being masculine is something gets required of you. You live up to that, you become masterful at it, you internally validate, and you make a difference in the world. I don't know if too many guys are making much of a difference doom scrolling on Instagram, checking out things on Twitter. But again, that's the world that we live in. And every time I mention to a man, you might want to try getting off social media for a while. You see the deer in the headlight look. Oh fuck, not that. Don't make me get off social media. Don't make me put my phone down for a while. So we're addicted to that, which means it distracts us from actually just getting out and doing something with our lives.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Was that more than what you were asking for in the question?
Oh no, that was amazing. That was amazing. And I think a couple of things you mentioned were super interesting. One, just the point of the education system not being designed for men, for boys. Something I've looked into a decent bit or just listened to on podcasts and stuff about, and they're talking about just like the rate of college graduation has changed like from 60-40 male to 60-40 female over the past 50 years. Crazy change in that. And then I think it's, to your point of just a lot of masculine or feminine teachers, I think there's like 10 times more Army pilots that are females than kindergarten teachers that are males, or there's crazy stat like that as well, of just showing
I heard something. I heard that statistic recently. So yeah, either that's just a pretty good internet statistic, or it may be true.
Yeah,
and when I was in graduate school, I was in graduate school in the 80s and child development, and I remember what now I recognize as a feminist kind of doctrine. I was taught that basically there is no gender, there's no masculine, feminine, they're just social constructs imposed on children, and that, which was interesting. While they're saying that, they're also saying, but everything masculine is competition, that's bad. Everything feminine is cooperation, which is good. And so nowadays in the school system, those are school teachers they were teaching. That was in the 80s. Nowadays in the school systems, they teach there is no gender. There's as many genders as there are people in the world. And the kids boys grow up hearing toxic masculine and hear about mansplaining and manspreading and all the things wrong that with boys. They get that in the educational system. In general, I've not heard anybody tell me, because I listen to a lot of people, I've not heard anybody say that their sons are getting positive messages about masculinity in the school system. And so where are they going to get positive messages about being a boy, about being a man? And again, I'm not a big fan of being like, oh, we're victims, we're being done too. But there is a definite trend, both, through the internet, socially, the school system, that little boys not only don't learn how to grow up and be a man, they're told it's actually a bad thing that they were born a boy. And, that doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us.
Do you think it is other men's duty to step in and provide that message, like on social media, I guess, to be a voice somewhere else? Maybe people like yourself, or just people who have this view that this is what's happening, despite, like you said, being on social media and all that stuff is not necessarily always a good thing?
Well, if we don't, if nobody's saying it, nobody's going to hear it. That's
Yeah.
part of the problem. And again, I'm not big into being a victim. I don't like to play that role of victim. I don't like to say, well, all of our problems are caused by feminism or caused by this or caused by that. But when it comes to little boys feeling good about themselves as boys and growing up to be men that feel good about themselves, I don't think this is the education system's fault. I don't think it's women's fault. I think it is a male issue. Again, our ancestors were initiated by men. Men came and took the boys and basically said, come work on the farm, come learn how to do this trade, come learn how to hunt an animal, come learn how to, provide and protect. Boys were taught that by men. So it's men that have dropped the ball in helping men or young boys get initiated into the world of the masculine. There's no right way to do that. There's no one way to do that. It can happen, I think, through sports. It happens sometimes through the military. But it's men that have let boys and men down. So yes, I do take that responsibility. It's one reason I started a men's membership program. And it's not necessarily old. It's not close to boys, but it's not our target audience. But for example, one of the things I want to do that's high on my to-do list before I die, hopefully get enough time to do this, is to write a series of books for young boys. I envision it to be like 5 books, not so much graphic novel, but fiction, starting with a boy on his 11th birthday. And then so book 1 is his 11th birthday, book 2 is his 13th, 15th, 17th, 19th. 5 books as a boy goes progressing and through each developmental stage and struggles that boys have, when they're 11, struggles at 13, struggles at 15, 19, and bring that from a boy starting with the early novels being a little bit more kind of magical oriented, a little bit more how an 11-year-old would see the world. By the time he's 19, he's on a vision quest. He might be experimenting with plant medicine. He's doing some things at 19. There's a lot, so there's just following this boy's life from 11. So I've already scoped the whole thing out. Whenever I talk to people about that series, people, you got to write that. You got to write that. So,
Yeah.
excuse me. It is launching this became the highest priority. Doing that series of novels for boys and young men, it's a high priority. It's something I can do to bring the message I've been teaching men for 30 years to a younger audience. And it's funny. The biggest push to do that is the emails I get from mothers. They'll say, I'll get emails that say, Robert, I've got a 13-year-old son, a 17-year-old son, 19, whatever age. And they'll say, I'm already seeing nice guy traits in my son. I'll hear that from fathers too. But moms writing me saying, what can I do? And I said, well, I'll tell the moms, unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do because anything you do, your son will just be trying to please you, which is kind of what we're trying to get them away from. Right? And so, but it's obvious you're concerned, and then I'll offer up resources that might be helpful. But yeah, just that, that even moms could just buy this series of books for their 11-year-old, their 15-year-old, their 19-year-old. So I do take that seriously because it's not just a matter I want to point fingers and say, oh, it's the school system's fault, it's feminism's fault, it's mother's fault. I actually don't think that. I think they all have an influence, but I really think it's on us men, that we men need to be reaching out to the boys. Because, nowadays if a boy goes online, so he's got the messages about toxic masculinity, this, that, and the other. So he goes looking and finds Andrew Tate, or he finds, it goes over to kind of more the misogynistic, male message about women and dating and success. And I'm not sure that helps them either. But there's not what other resources do the young boys have when they go looking for information at 12, 15, 17, 19? So there is a gap there that conscious men need to fill. Conscious, open-hearted men need to fill.
Yeah, that would be a super powerful series of books that could make a meaningful difference. So I'm looking forward to seeing those come out. Do you think there's any good role models out there right now that is relatively high profile? You think?
Good role models. Unfortunately, I don't watch TV. I don't watch. I haven't seen a movie in a while.
I'm
Not
with you
on
on that.
social media. So, so when I get asked those kind of questions, it's okay, because probably most young boys are probably going to find their role models probably from YouTube influencers, maybe athletes, maybe musicians that they follow. And I think was it the Charles Barkley commercials back during Super Bowl several years ago where he says for Nike, "I'm not a role model." Well, the
Hmm.
truth is, boys do look up to athletes. They do look up to musicians. They do look up to people that they see as successes. And unfortunately, I can't pull anything right out of my hat right this minute to say, well, there's a good role model. Um, but my view, this is kind of what I've tried to do personally for myself, is that if I don't have like a quote role model or a mentor, I kind of build it by a team, a committee, and I tend to find men, whether they're like in the sports world or men that I know or men that I think make a good difference. And not that I try to mimic any one of them, but I use that as a reinforcement that we can have a positive influence and make a difference in the world.
A lot of the stuff that you talk about being very just kind of structural, kind of our culture, of our society nowadays. Do you kind of see this as a thing that's kind of inevitable, especially with increase of single parent households, with those being particularly single parent moms, continue of divorces as well, and then also just men being nice guys that aren't able to overcome that and share their stories, their lessons to the younger generation. So do you think it's kind of a inevitable path we continue on?
No, I don't actually. So maybe that's good news.
That is good news.
You know, I'm going to give you my opinion. Somebody who's maybe been kind of watching the process and been in the process for 30 plus years. 30 something years ago when my second wife said, you're not such a nice guy. You need to go get help. I didn't even know where to begin. It was pretty much pre-internet. There's just, you'd hear about stuff maybe by word of mouth. And so I like I said, I ended up in a 12-step group that probably wasn't really where I needed to be per se, but it was, right? I got a lot out of that. And it really started me in a good direction. Then a counselor friend of mine told me about a group he was in, so I kind of got in that group, and luckily I got good resources. But I'll often say when I first started doing my own personal self development work, um, there was no more Mr. Nice Guy out there. It wasn't out there for me to find and read. And I've often joked if I saw it in a bookstore, I probably would have been afraid to have anybody see me pick it up and read it. If I'd taken it home, I would have taken the cover off of it so my wife wouldn't see it. That's how much of a nice guy I was. But
Yeah, you
what
want to know something funny? Actually, I bought your book in
tell me,
2021.
you put a cover on it, right?
I didn't put a cover on it, but I bought it in 2021. I didn't read it until January of this year because because I didn't want anybody to see me like reading that book with that title.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Like when the book came out, I think kind of it's a paradoxical, in a sense, title. Why would a guy write a book teaching guys to not be nice? There's enough not nice guys out there already. But everybody's probably said at some point, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm done. So it's a common phrase that makes you think for a minute. But so that did not exist when I started my own journey, right? What did exist was kind of pretty strong. It was a mythopoetic movement. Robert Bly, Michael Meade, go out in the woods, beat a drum, have a talking stick, say ho. And I attended, some meetings like that. There just wasn't much out there. Okay. Nowadays, I'm so thrilled. I get several requests a week to come on people's podcasts. You can Google men's groups, men's work, men's anything on the internet, and find thousands of men's coaches with men's programs. There's books for men. Books do get bought by men. So for me, the good news is, and even though I'm saying, with the internet, guys are on their phones and social media and all that. This is my opinion, that it doesn't, I don't think, move us forward. But I get on my phone too. I'll look at sports scores and, I'll look at messages, blah, blah. So, but I'm grateful that the internet and a rising consciousness among men and women, because one of the things I found is that in general, what we might call a men's movement, a men's, awareness, growth, yogic, whatever, is, men are working on themselves in a lot of different ways. There's no one right way. That I find in general, women are very supportive of that. Women want strong men in this world. They don't want men that, in general, they don't want men that can dominate. They want men they can depend on. Men that will stick around and raise their sons. So women I found are generally supportive. So here is my point of view, my opinion, is that, most significant changes culturally happen with swings of a pendulum, some sort of revolution, so to speak. And so, for example, when people talk about the patriarchy, the patriarchies existed for, maybe 10,000 years. So we're basically, the men, provided and protected and called the shots, and the women were more dependent. But I call that an ownership model, where when we quit being tribal and communal, men started settling down and owning a piece of land, owning a tree, owning a crop, owning their animal, owning their wives, owning their kids. It was ownership. Now, so, starting back in the 50s or 60s, when you start hearing patriarchy, it's all like, everything evil about men, the abuses, the colonialism even of, several centuries, about men owning things and not treating what they own well, right? At the same time, patriarchy was also provide and protect. It wasn't all evil. Nowadays, when you hear it's pretty much the evil part. So it was both, right? There was positives and negatives in it. Well, we needed to change, Women didn't need to be dependent, submissive, second-class citizens. White males didn't need to rule the world and just use people of color or abuse people that weren't like them. We needed a shift. Now, when things shift, they tend to go really far the other direction, throwing out the whole baby with the bathwater. The internet has allowed that shift to really be a big one. So, feminism started out slowly. And, probably one thing that I might say that might piss off feminists the most, that I say that what has succeeded with feminism succeeded because good men helped it succeed. University presidents, legislatures, start saying, you're right, we do need to change the laws. We do need to change how we do things. This isn't right. This isn't fair. And because I think good men recognize the need for change, things change. Now, again, change can be slowly, and a lot of times we're kicking and fighting the change because we don't know what's the other side of it. But then the internet sped that up with the whole hashtag Me Too movement. Kind of just anything gets labeled toxic masculinity, to where even like razor blade companies are doing commercials about toxic masculinity. So it swung. I actually think the pendulum is starting to move back. There might be some that want it to stay at this extreme, or just want to hate on men. Men are evil. Men are the cause of all the problems in the world. And we still are in a lot of ways. So it's going to be men that are the solution. But I believe it's beginning to slowly move, not back to center, but maybe move to a whole different level of men getting more conscious, more open-hearted, not more passive, not more yes dear, whatever you want, but have a consciousness, a power, a strength, an awareness, an open-heartedness about them that are truly making a difference in the world. I mean, just doing like interviews like this. This is an example of how I think things are moving and changing, and I see it as positive. And what I find that in general, again, women are very supportive of men doing their work. And, the world, believe it or not, is not filled with women that hate men, even though it sounds that way on social media. When I started bumping into, say in my 30s and 40s, bumping into feminists, so women who said, I'm a feminist, I go, well, here's my version of feminist. All men are evil or bad. If it has a penis, it's evil, right? And women go, why do you think that? I said, because that's what I heard in the 60s and 70s. Every man's a rapist and erection's a sign of aggression. Those were bumper stickers I saw, right? And they go, oh, that was just a few really angry women. I go, yeah, but they were the ones I heard. So even back then, it wasn't that all women hated men or thought men were bad. And I don't think that's true even today. It just sounds that way, if you get on social media and on a lot of blog articles. So my answer is I think things are beginning to shift in what I consider to be a positive way of men becoming more conscious, more powerful, more open-hearted, more loving. And I think the women are, when I talk to women about this, they go, where can I meet those guys? Women are craving that kind of masculinity in this world.
I couldn't agree more that it's swinging back just from whenever I started my journey really back in 2020 and just how more popular men's groups have become. I joined my first men's group in 2021 and I was, far and away the only person I knew in like my direct life at that point that was doing something like that, and just how popular people who were talking about it were at the time. And now it's broadened just in these 4 years pretty significantly that I see
Yeah.
more
You've seen a
normal quote
change in
unquote
3
people.
years. So yeah. So you can imagine what I've seen in 30 plus years. And again, yeah, when I say the pendulum's kind of, I don't mean it's going to swing back to oh, let's have some of the evils and good stuff of patriarchy. I think it's not swinging back to a middle. Again, I think it's rising. Because, for example, the work you've done on you over the last 4 years is not so you can become a better person or a different person. It's probably so that you integrate all parts of yourself. You can accept all parts of yourself. You can look at all parts of it. You don't have to hide anything about it. You don't have to try to get anybody's approval or become something so people will like you or love you. You're probably just working at being more you, right? More you, and loving everything about yourself, which makes you, a safer person, a more loving person, somebody who can love more, accept more love, be more productive in your life. All of those, just in 4 years, you've become a man that's making the world a better place. And I love seeing that. I just love seeing that transition happening in our world.
Again, you nailed it. It's not improving or changing. It's revealing who I truly am and accepting it and loving it and just being a more authentic version of myself. And for
Yeah, I
me, it
love
was,
that.
just fear of what other people thought just constrained me in so many ways. And so to have that just rock lifted off you, it is a feeling truly like no other. And it's
I
been
love that analogy. Having that rock lifted off you. I love that.
Yeah. So for you, what is it that most men are missing to, raising this self-awareness, consciousness? What is kind of the fundamental thing that they're missing in life in general, or that just why they
Yeah.
haven't been able to make that big first step or two steps?
And that's a good question. And I think that's a question a lot of men start asking when they realize, how come I'm not happy in my marriage? Or how come I can't talk to women? Or how come I'm not living up to my potential? Or how come I procrastinate? Or how come I can't stop looking at porn? I think people will ask me a lot of times, well, how do people find my book? Or how do they get started doing this? And I said, usually there's some pain point in their life. Often, not always, but often it has to do with relationship. Maybe they can't talk to women, they can't get laid, they can't maintain a relationship, they avoid them altogether, their relationship they're in, isn't working well, whatever. It can be a lot of that. Sometimes it is, they can't quit looking at porn, they can't stop procrastinating, they're not living with any kind of purpose. But there's usually a pain point when guys say, can this be done differently? Can I have a better life than this? And then we go looking for information. Nowadays, there's so much information out there. A lot of it good, some of it not so good. But you have to start ferreting through what makes sense to me that might help start making this better for me. So I actually forgot exactly what your question was that got me going on this part. So repeat the question again, and I'll pick it right back up.
Yeah, no, that was really good. But it was just, what is that kind of fundamental thing that they're missing at a core level?
That. So if for example, if you go to integrationnation.net, that's my new men's membership program. If you start reading it, it answers that question. And it basically says, wherever you're stuck in life, whatever's not working, wherever you're unhappy, wherever you're unfulfilled, I say there, it can probably be attributed to one primary thing. And that's a lack of good men in your life. It's good men doing better. Our ancestors for 1.5 million years we lived in tribes, all of us. And the men connected with men and learned how to be masterful men. Even our grandfathers were primarily raised by men and taught to be masterful men. I'm not saying they were perfect. I know alcoholism and abuse and things like that were rampant if you just go back 100, 120, 200 years ago. Most men lived in poverty, right? Most men had very hard, short lives. So I'm not saying any of that was perfect. But what I'm saying is that men connected with men, right? And nowadays, again, we've gotten away from that. You know, boys are raised by women. They never leave that nursery. Whatever a guy's doing that's not moving him forward, usually there's a lack of good men. So, like, for example, when I was a marriage and family therapist for many years, when a couple would come in my office, one of the things I'd say to both the man and the woman, the best thing you can do for your marriage is have good same-sex friends. And I've been telling men for years, a healthy relationship with a woman is built on good relationships with men. I'm just convinced that having good men in our life make everything better, whether you have a men's group, you're in a bigger men's program of some sort, a 12-step group. And just as a personal example, like I did most of my own recovery, my nice guy recovery, wrote the book while I was attending a men's group every week, right? When I was in private practice back in the Seattle, Washington area before I moved to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, I was leading 5 men's groups a week. About 7 years ago, I just had bought a home here in Mexico, married my wife, who's Mexican. She doesn't speak English, so I'm learning Spanish. I don't have close friends. I did have a number of friends when I lived in a different part of town, but it was mainly gay men. It was a very gay part of town. So I had a lot of gay friends. And then, I got married, moved out of that part of town into a house. All of a sudden, I have no men in my life. And I was saying, I had maybe 1.5 good guy friends. So half was a guy that I was about to move on out of my life because it burned too many bridges. So I thought I got it. So I started looking for some sort of men's program. I mean, I was working with men. My book had been out for years, and one of the guy in a workshop I was leading said, "Robert, I've been in this men's program for a year. The coach of it follows a model from David Data. He's working with Data quite a bit. We have 3 retreats, every year." I said, "Sign me up." So I got into that program 6 years ago, and so over the last 5 years, my life has transformed. My business has just blown up. I've gotten more productive. Financially, I've just totally reversed my financial situation. Struggles in my marriage, we've worked through the majority of those things. We communicate well. I handle that so much better. I'm healthy. I'm alive. Guys someone just told me the other day, "Robert, at 68 years old, you have more energy and more enthusiasm than guys half your age." I go, "I feel good. I'm making a difference in the world." And the reason all of these things have happened is that I'm surrounded by good men. If you looked at both my messaging feed, like on Signal, if you looked at my calendar, after I get off this call, I'm going to talk to a buddy of mine on Zoom. I've got more calls tomorrow. Signal, I got messages going on with my friends. I think I easily have 25 good men in my life, and probably, I've talked to regularly, and maybe 50 men since I, started doing this men's program, 50 men that I could call them up and say, "I need help," and they'd be there, without a doubt. Probably more than that. Some guys the other day said, "Robert, you want to come to Austin and come do this thing with us?" "Yeah, let's do that." Some other, "Robert, come do this with us." It's just, I'm surrounded by love, and I'm surrounded by men that value me and think well of me and are there for me, and I'm there for them. And so, to answer your question, I'm just a big fan that men need men in their lives to live up to our full potential, work and career and finances, to have good relationships, to have a good sex life, to just keep growing, and to be trustworthy, to be honest, to be open-hearted. I was, one of the reasons I got into the men's program is that I knew that a previous relationship I was in went downhill for many reasons, and some of them were mine. And the primary reason on my side of it was I just quit basically telling my girlfriend what bothered me, where I was unhappy and what wasn't working. I just kept it all in. and I had no good men in my life. And so now I got married 7 years ago. I didn't want to do that same thing in this relationship, because when I do that, when most people do that, the relationship just goes downhill in a hurry and people start acting badly, and it usually ends bad. I've ended some relationships badly because I wasn't communicating what I needed to communicate. So I thought, I need good men in my life. And so I've got a group of guys, for example, every other week, 7 of us. We've gotten on Zoom for 6 years now, and our commitment is we do it till the day we die. And like when I got on this call just a week or so ago, I I didn't want to get on the call. I love these guys, but I had a fight with my wife that morning. I wasn't feeling very good, and I just sat. I knew they were on the call. I said, I'm going to be late. I just sat and looked at my screen and ate some peanut butter and thought, I want to get on the call. And I thought, I need to. Got on the call, told the guys at the end that I'd been sitting there eating peanut butter instead of getting on the call with them. And I said, but I knew I needed to on the call. And they all said, Robert, you're usually such a good mood. You're usually up. You're usually positive. They said, we're glad you're here. We're glad you told us this. We're glad to support you. I got off the call. I felt better. I felt good. And went and worked on the stuff with my wife that, that had left hanging after we'd had our fight. It wasn't a terrible fight. It was just, why are we doing this again kind of thing. And I went and just loved on my wife and talked about some stuff and moved forward. Why? Because I got on the call with these guys who've known me for over 6 years and know everything there is to know about me, right? Nothing is hidden from me. So I'm just a big fan of, we just need that tribe. We need that masculine initiation. We need that connection with men. And I think that's what brings out the best of this.
Yeah, the power of community can't be understated. Again, to my own example.
That's a good way to put it. Can't be understated.
My own example of just my direct experience, that first men's group that I joined in 2021 is really what made a huge difference for me and really escalated my growth. And nowadays I have a weekly call with a guy every single week that he was a guy I used to live with, both on a very similar path, but weekly call with him, constantly stay in contact with other friends and just other guys that I met through that, even in that original men's group 2 years ago, still stay in contact. That when you surround yourself with better people or people who are trying to be better or be more authentic, raise their consciousness.
Yeah.
Just by that forcing function of you being in that same vicinity, it raises your level and helps you want to, do the work that it will take to do that, because it doesn't obviously just happen. It is work.
Well, we probably have heard the statistic that says something like we tend to be similar to the 5 people closest to us, right? And that gets applied to a lot of different ways. And I've read some research where they found out if you hang out with fat people, you're more likely to get fat. These are like scientists that actually studied that. So if you hang out with fat people, you're more likely to get fat. You hang out with people that know how to make money, you're probably going to do better at making money. If you hang out with people that are more conscious and open-hearted, whatever you want more of in your life, hang out with people that have more of that in their life. And it will, it'll raise those boats. It'll raise our life up. And again, I'm just a big fan. I often joke because I like hanging out with intelligent people. I'll say, if I walk into a room where I've gathered my family, all my family, my mother, my son, my granddaughter, my sister, and all my closest friends, when I walk in the room, I'm going to lower the average IQ of the room. And I'm not a dumb person, but that's how much I surround myself with really smart people. Not just like intellect, just like book smart, but just smart people. I like that. So I surround myself with the highest quality people I can find. I don't have anybody in my life that treats me bad. I don't have anybody in my life that I look down on. I don't have anybody in my life that's dragging me down in any way. None. I moved on from that, and I've surrounded myself with people that lift me as I lift them. And we need that.
Yeah, it's so important. But at the same time, I believe I saw a stat that said we're living in an age where I think every 3 or every 5 men said that they didn't have just a close friend or a handful of close friends. So it's a men loneliness
sad,
epidemic. It is. Yeah. So how do we, start to bridge that gap? Is it just everybody needs to find it on their own pace and it's putting out content and hopefully they find it? Or is there something that, men can do to bridge that gap themselves? Because as an adult, it's, if you don't have anybody that you know where to go to, it is a kind of a hard start.
Yeah, I read a blog, well, a op-ed article in the New York Times about a year ago by a former Surgeon General of the United States, a man of Indian heritage, and he was Surgeon General under one president, and I think he then became Surgeon General again under another president. And he wrote about this epidemic of loneliness, some really good statistics. And he said he went through that when he was Surgeon General in the U.S. He got, just was so busy all the time, just got disconnected from friends, from family. And he said he went through depression. And when you go through that kind of loneliness and depression, it affects you physically. You have more ailments. You're more likely to die young, more suicidal ideation, more bad habits. And so it is an epidemic. Here we are. You can get on social media. You can swipe right on your phone, meet people. Right, we have all the tools to meet people, and people are reporting that they're lonely because we're not really connecting with people. Now, here's one of the struggles I have as I try to work with men and influence their lives. Like I said, I've been leading groups, doing workshops, programs, men's programs, trying to give men community. That's really my goal, build community for men. And since I launched Integration Nation back July of 23, so we're on our 7th month now. We enroll men every 28 days. We're going through an enrollment period right now. And there's a charge to it. You got to pay money, but it's not crazy expensive. And there's a dropout rate. I always wonder, why do people leave? Why, it's such a good program. We have like every Thursday, they can come on a call with me. And we have 7 what we call tribe calls a week where they can, so you can get on a call almost every day of the week and go be with other good men. And we have an online platform. And still, even after paying $1 for the first month, guys will drop out of that. And I'll go, and I realize there's 2 things that we're competing with and trying to give men community. One is their time. Guys are busy. At least we tell ourselves we're busy. And I tell men, hey, we all have the same amount of time. Some guys get to the gym, other guys don't, right? We all have the same amount of time. Some guys go to a men's program, some guys don't. It's really a matter of priorities. So we all say we're busy. I say that, I'm busy. I don't watch TV, I'm too busy. I don't watch movies, I'm too busy. Whatever. I can't go to the gym, I'm too busy. But the truth is it's priorities. But we're busy. So that's a reality. We just live in a busy world. So that prevents us from connecting. We're just busy. We're too busy to connect. I made the decision, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago, when I realized I'd gotten so consumed in my marriage, my second marriage, that I was always I neglected me. All my friendships had fallen away. I was always trying to make my wife happy all the time. I had no connection. And I thought, the problem is I'm not making the time. I remember one time I was mowing my lawn, and my neighbor came out and just kind of started to talk to me. And I stopped the lawnmower, but I kept my shoulder to him, kind of let him know I'm working, I'm busy, I don't have time. And it dawned on me, I thought, wait a minute. I don't even have time to turn off my mower, turn and face my neighbor and talk for 5 minutes. And I thought, I got to make time to connect with men. And so, again, I've been doing that for years. And like I said, over the last 6 years, going on retreats with men, getting on Zoom with men now. I'm texting men. I get up every morning and text a bunch of my friends. First thing, they know I'm going to text. It takes time. So there's one thing. We've got to make the time. The second reason where I see that men might join my program or not join it is that, believe it or not, a lot of men don't want men in their life. They don't. A lot of men have issues with men. A lot of men have dad issues. A lot of men have been raised to be different than their fathers or different than other men who have not, as I said, not been initiated into a community of men. I hear a lot of men tell me, I'm intimidated by guys. I don't like guys. They just watch sports and drink beer and objectify women. I go, some men do that, and there's nothing wrong with those things. If that's all your life is, that's probably pretty shallow. But men will make these excuses. Well, all men are that way over there. And so what they end up doing is they just stay in that nursery I was talking about. They can stay online, surfing the internet, watching YouTube, jerking off to porn, playing video games. Maybe that's their one connection with men. Maybe they're going to get on World of Warcraft and, they got some other, but that's not really bonding with men. They're on social media. You're not. A lot of men nowadays kind of play that lone wolf thing. They just stay in isolation because they've never learned or had the experience of what is the joy of connecting with men and how men can bless your life and open you. And even the men's programs I've been a part of, you see some men that really join in and get involved, and others just stay on the sideline, drop out quickly because they don't want to. They don't want to be connected to other men. I don't know the solution for that, actually. I don't know how to make a guy want to come be with other men, be vulnerable, risk, reveal himself, get supported, find out he's not alone, find out guys are kind of fun. They can be funny. They can be smart. They can be fun, right? And they can hold us accountable. A lot of men don't want to be held accountable. We want to just kind of slide by and not have anybody know, that we're kind of living a marginal life. So there's a lot going on here, but the two key things are we're all too busy, and a lot of guys have never learned the joy of being with men. And so they're afraid of men, or they'd rather just go, let me just read a good book or watch some YouTube videos on how to do it. If you'd read No More Mr. Nice Guy, and that's all you did, just read the book. Well, you'd get good information there, but I doubt it would change your life. It isn't until you get out and start working it and get around other men and get supported and held accountable and support other men and hold them accountable and have fun being with men that now all of a sudden the information becomes transformational. Information alone can help, but it doesn't usually transform people. It's the personal interaction with other people that tends to transform people.
That is perfectly put. Someone says information isn't knowledge, action is knowledge. And I think that ties in perfectly with what you just said. And so I really appreciate your time, Dr. Glover. This was everything that I thought it was going to be and more. Like I said, your book explained me perfectly and has helped me raise my consciousness, be more aware of who I am and why I am some of the things I am. And like you said, a 4-year process to overcome that, and obviously still working on it daily as well. But that book has definitely helped.
I've been at it for 30 years, so we'll just keep doing it.
A day at a time. That's all we can do, right?
One day at a time.
And so if people listening want to check out the book, where's the best place? Where's the best place to reach them if they're looking for potentially join a group with you or just see what else you got going on?
Well, find any of my books, of course, Amazon. No More Mr. Nice Guy. I wrote a book called Dating Essentials for Men, Dating Essentials for Men, Frequently Asked Questions, and I co-authored a book called The Big Stick that is actually, it's a survey of everything I've taught for about the last 30 years that one of my coaches co-wrote with me. So Amazon's a great place. If they just want to find out about me, what I do, drglover.com, drglover.com. Integration Nation is integrationnation.net. It's a men's program that, has information, calls, mentoring, community. It's what I'd want to have available to me if all of a sudden I read No More Mr. Nice Guy and go, where do I start? I've created where I would want to go start and how I'd want to go connect. So integrationnation.net is another place where they can find out about me and what I've got going on with programs for men.
Amazing. I will have all those linked in the show notes below so people can easily find them. But Dr. Glover, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Nick, thank you. It was fun. I had a good time, and it'd be fun to do it again sometime.
I would love to.